The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And you're listening to the Church Planter Podcast.
You would think we finish each other's sentences by now, but...
I try to do it all dramatic, give that little 1 second pause before I said the most magical name there is in podcasting, and that would be the Church Planter Podcast.
See, and it frightened me, that pause. I'm not used to such things. This is why we can't have nice things. I was thinking about this morning.
Nightly at midnight till 2 a.m. It's the Church Planter Podcast.
That's so rad. I would love to do that. One of my favorite podcasters has this thing called The Morning Stream. And I just tuned into that thing because they talk about, it's like Seinfeld, the show about everything and the show about nothing.
You're talking about me, right?
Time.
You said one of my favorite podcasters. Now, what is this podcast that I do that you're so enthralled with?
Church Planter Podcast, of course. And,
yes.
But you and I were talking about that. How fun would it be to just like have a show where it's all smack talk? But I'm in textbook
that's my
prison.
life. I am like waiting until you come to the dark side and forget all of this church planter stuff, so I can just be like, yeah, I get to have fun. That's it on the podcast.
Well, the problem is I want to do all these nerd podcasts. Like I want to do a World of Warcraft podcast.
Dude, I still think it's funny. You came to me saying we need to do a World of Warcraft magazine. I'm like, dude, I think that's a great idea. Have fun with it. Let me know how it goes. And you're like, no, I need you. I'm like, nope. Have fun with it. Let me know how it goes.
So for those of you that don't know, my secret to ministry in all these years, not burning out, not quitting, not, sabotaging my own life and marriage, is video games. And I'll tell people, they'll say, hey, what's the secret to staying power? And it's not video games. It's anything you can do that just kind of gives you that little window of feeling human again. Because so many church planners and ministers, everything they eat, sleep, drink, and breathe their church nonstop. And they start feeling non-human. I mean, I think that's kind of why God gives us a wife, why God gives us a husband, why God gives us kids, is so that we can actually just be human beings, go do human being stuff for a little bit. And hobbies.
I just want to point out, God didn't give me a husband. I'm just going to point that out.
Well, we have women listeners, and I was quite proud of myself.
We have a woman listener. I think let's couch this correctly.
Do our wives count? I mean, even my wife doesn't listen, but she tunes in sometimes.
My wife
just
would
checks
never,
up on us.
You've got a special woman. My wife is like, okay, whatever. Like, she does not care what I do.
Yeah, like when I come to your kid's party and they're like, who's that dude? And you're like, oh, one of Pete's foosball friends.
Oh, you? No, my kids love you. You're Jesus steak, remember?
No, I mean the other adults at the party that want to know, who's that guy?
No, they're like, wow, Pete actually talks? That's what happens when they see me with you. Wow, I didn't realize Pete ever said anything. Yeah,
Not much. But yes, he does talk sometimes.
We should actually throw in, if this is your first time joining us on the Church Planter Podcast, this is what we affectionately refer to as smack talk. This is how Peyton and I do friendship. This is our catch up for the week. And you get to be a part of that. And that's usually about 20 to 30 minutes on the long side. And then we get into your church planning goodness. So stick around.
So what's funny, Pete, what's funny about that is that, so far they're just like, oh, this is like the banter. Like I've come onto the podcast, it's the banter. And no, it is so much more than the banter. And you this is about the point at which other podcasts stop. And I was thinking about this today, that the difference between our podcast and like I love Carey Nieuwhof, right? I don't listen to. I was on that podcast. Funny enough, I was episode 100. If you want
I
to hear,
think he was on our podcast, or at least we did an interview with him. I don't know that we ever.
You know
heard
what's
it.
so funny? You and I. So we have a great relationship with Carey because when nobody knew who,
I
he
like
was
how you
and-
say we have a great relationship. Like I've ever had anything more to do with him other than that one interview.
You both have ginger hair, right? So it's like,
You know what?
there's that bond.
You cannot say that word unless you are a ginger. You cannot use the term
Okay.
ginger.
What do I say? What's the
I don't
PC
care what
term?
you say, but that's not the word you get
Auburn.
to use. Only
Auburn?
my people
Auburn?
can use it.
I didn't say you're both gingers. Now that would have been,
you
'cause there's
can't
that-
even use the word in a sentence.
There is a concern from us shall I say, Auburn-haired people about gingerfication, this process whereby things are being taken over through the gene pool.
Gingerfication. That's the greatest word ever.
That should be our title right there.
If I
made
could
that
spell
up
it, I
on the
would.
spot. It's rad. So, but what was funny is we didn't know who he was. And so early on, we were like,
Wait. Let's not say we. I don't know who anybody is. Like no
you're
one
like,
thinks.
I still don't know who he is.
People are not like, hey, that Pete guy, he's the guy you go to if you want to get connected in Christendom. He knows everybody. No, that's Peyton.
Well, what was funny, dude, is that, we were, back in the early days of the magazine when he was just getting started. We didn't know who he was. Somehow, I think I read something by him online. It was like the first year of his blog. And I reached out to him and said, hey, could we use that in the magazine? It was something about like reaching the next generation. He's really good on that. And then every so once in a while, we would go, hey, that's not a phrase, by the way. I'd say, hey, what about that red-haired guy? Let's use him again. And we would literally put him in there, and then we'd be like, what's his name again? And trying to spell it, my word, right? Like now I can spell it
Didn't
my
he
sleep.
like tell us my website is CareyNewhoff.com? And we're like, I'm not sure how to type that into a browser. Can you spell that, please?
He had a little trick that he would use, kind of like R.C. Sproul, where he'd be like, it's Sproul as in soul, not Sproul as in growl. And I can't remember what it was, but it was something about how to spell his name every time. And I can't remember what it was. Did you see that meme that I posted last night about I before E?
The weird, where it's like Kevin.
It was so funny.
I've seen that one before. That's been out.
Oh
for
my
years.
gosh.
Come on,
I
come to
thought
me
that
with the
was-
new meme. Come to me with the new meme, not
Okay,
these old
all right,
memes.
All right. Well, I wanted to read it, but Facebook won't let me in right now. Hey, I got put in Facebook jail with Dan Sams. But let me hold that thought. I'm interrupting my own train of thought here, which happens a lot. Squirrel. But I did want to say it's funny because I listened to Carey every blue moon, and like he did a fantastic one with some marketing chick from Chick-fil-A. No pun intended there. You see what I did? But she was.
It took me a while. I actually had to take a minute, and I'm like, what? What was the pun?
And I'll be here all podcast, folks. Thanks for coming, and you've been lovely. And when you listen to Carey's like, you can listen to him because it's like he cares. It's like
he cares.
It's like he cares. He's like this,
but he doesn't.
Hey, everybody. I really love it when, and you're just like, this guy's nice. Like he soothes my soul. I have a friend, right? Like when you feel like you have no friend in ministry, you turn on the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast and you're like, he my friend. Like I have a friend. Like that's Carey cares. That would be my hashtag if I were Carey, Carey cares. Carey Nieuwhof. I don't know where all these puns are coming from. It's not good. And, but then I was, as I'm thinking this, I'm like, man, that's like the opposite of us. We're like the anti-Carey Nieuwhof podcast. We're like the podcast we listen to. And it's like, yeah, you don't get enough abuse in your ministry. Yeah, come back here, you scumbag. We'll beat you some more.
It's not
our
like
podcast.
we've ever had Philip Yancey on and made him feel uncomfortable on our podcast.
He didn't know the safe word. Oklahoma. We need to give a safe word to him if should he ever
that should be
come on
part of
again.
our instructions. Like when we email out to someone, hey, here's how you get on with Pete and Peyton. Oh, and by the way, the safe word is Oklahoma.
Oh gosh, that would be so great.
I think it really would be. And then I would love
and
to have could you imagine if we were interviewing Rick Warren and all of a sudden he just goes Oklahoma?
Well, it's
you
funny
could see him
you
say
say
it
that.
with authority.
Because I could see him say, I was just, as soon as he said that, I'm thinking, who do you think, Pete, would be the guests who would actually use the safe word because they thought it was funny? And I think he's one of those dudes, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That dude was funny. He was super cool. I just like to drop in every once in a while that we had dinner with him. That's all.
I know, right? Don't you say it as almost like it was an intimate dinner with just the three of us, not the fact that there were 80 people in the room and 10 at our table?
Except at our table was like 8 people,
and
we were 2 of them. We were a quarter of the people.
I love how when we sat down, I literally sit down next to him and we're like, am I at the adult table? Where's the kid table? I'm sorry, I picked the wrong table to sit at.
That's how I felt. So I literally sit down. You weren't sitting down yet. I sat down first. There's one space. We are late. We go in. We sit in the back corner table thinking we're not going to disturb anything. I sit down. There's a space between me and
not to
some
mention,
other dude.
this is for speakers at Exponential. And
Right.
I'm tagging along with you. I'm a speaker. I'm not a speaker at Exponential. I had no reason to be there other than they had food and I was going to get me some free food.
They're like, hey, look, Carrie Newhoff.
He almost made me spit out my tea on my computer, man.
So anyway, so I sit down and I look over and I see it's Rick stinking Warren and I go, oh crap. He looks up like, what? And I go, I think I'm at the wrong table, man. I'm sorry. I'll go sit somewhere else. And he goes, no, brother, you're at exactly the right table. And then you come and sit down right next to it. You fill that seat,
right?
And sit down right next to him.
And then I look over. I'm like, it's Rick.
In reality, you looked over and looked at me with a twinkle in your eye and said, "I can pee next to any man."
I love it.
Do you remember that talk?
It. Yes.
Who was it? Who was it? You were. Yeah.
Hold on. Talk. Alexa, shut up. She wants to tell me we're supposed to be recording a podcast right now. I don't know. I'm on the podcast.
I know we're early. And it's so good to be in the morning again. We're better in the morning. We thought we were okay last time in the afternoon, but we're way better.
That's only because Star Wars trailer had just come out and we wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, and I did talk a lot of smack.
You know what I thought was really interesting? That was the first podcast that we've actually had people comment on Facebook about it. And I was like, in a long time. Months, maybe a year even since the last time someone's commented on the podcast.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is actually a topic we've covered before and we barely just kind of touched on it. And they're like, wow, that's food for thought. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So somebody's not going back to our episode number 1 and starting there. What's up?
Yeah. That was episode 333.
I know. We're halfway to 666.
Well, sorry. We have to end before that episode.
We have to end before the 666th episode. Well, that's all right. We'll end at 665. How it's just out in time.
Well, it's going to be 111 episodes until
couldn't
we get
it also be 606? Isn't the translation? They're like, well, is it 666 or is it 606? Isn't that part of the debate?
No, I didn't know that. Sounds like
go look at the footnotes in your Bible. Someone's not reading the footnotes in their Bible. Go read them.
Really? 606. I don't know what that means. Boy, that would sure make a lot of heavy metal bands in the 80s mad.
That would also really upset everyone about barcodes. Don't you remember that with barcodes? They're like, well, if the first digit's a 6, and then the one in the middle's a 6, and the one at the end's a 6. So everything that's got a barcode is from the devil.
Wow.
You can tell.
Drunk uncles at the party, man.
You can tell I was raised in a Baptist church. That's all I'm going to throw
Hey,
out
man,
there, man.
it goes back to my Calvary Chapel days where, the beast was a supercomputer in Sweden. I mean,
Hey, you know what? We got to actually. I'm gonna announce this because we bought the domain name. We got a new magazine coming. Can I tell them about that?
No. You do it.
No, but can we? Can we like?
Yeah.
What their palette? Hey guys, there is a new magazine coming. There's going to be a whole new thing coming down the pipe. Did you see the logos that Ben's designed? I emailed them over this morning.
First two, baby. That's my vote.
Yeah, me too. I was like, Travis is like, hey, I like the first one. I'm like, dude, I kind of like the first one too. That was pretty cool.
Too.
Ecclesia magazine, boys and girls. Ecclesia magazine. It's going to be awesome.
That's Greek to those of you that don't listen to the podcast, so you're not very educated yet.
That's Greek to those of you who just decided, hey, I'm going to start doing ministry. Forget about this seminary business and learning Greek. I'm just going to go do ministry, which, by the way, we're all in favor of. It's not a derogatory thing.
It would be funny to get Dan Sams going, I didn't go to seminary. I just listened to the Church Planter podcast.
It'd be funny if we got Dan Sams going, I didn't go to seminary, but I do run a seminary. I run a theology class.
He went to seminary though, right?
I have not, but sure he did. Who knows? That guy's too smart. How could he have not? Like he's literally like he's the smartest guy I know outside of Peyton Jones.
I was gonna say,
is that okay?
Yeah, is Dan writing a textbook, Pete? Excuse me.
No, but Dan is doing a gun podcast with Pete Mitchell, so that immediately puts him as like in my inner circle.
That's immediately 20 points on the IQ
and he's a church
scale.
Planner. I mean, come on.
Hey,
he speaks my love language. He speaks my love language.
But let's be honest, though, right? Like being a church planner, just you lose 20 points on the IQ scale. We all know we're dumber than most pastors, right? Like. If we were smart, we wouldn't be doing this, man. We'd be taking some comfy gig somewhere else. There, you heard it from the Church Planter podcast. Welcome.
We insult our listeners by going, you've got a 20-point deficit in your IQ just by the mere fact.
Kerry would never say that. No. Kerry would never talk to his audience like, see, that's why he gets nice things.
Well, and that's why he's got a much bigger audience than us. Like, if you think about it, we are the longest running, most popular podcast for church planners, and we are incredibly small.
In the wild.
We are worldwide.
We've
got listeners in like, I don't know how many countries. It's got to be like 80 or 90.
See, I didn't know that. It's good I don't know these things. I walk around with a big head.
Yeah, but there's like 156 countries. So why are we in all of them, for crying out loud?
Oh, man. See, that's such the entrepreneur marketer in you. What? You're focused on the ones that we're not in.
Actually, not really, because I'm like, I don't care.
World domination.
I'm like, how do they even listen to us? I don't know what language they're speaking in, whatever little postage stamp country that is. I don't know. So all I really care about is what do people in the U.S. and somewhat the UK.
Okay, so we need to ask you as our listeners to do something for us. I have no time. Pete and I were just talking. I have zero margin. I am chained to a desk writing a textbook right now. And today, though, I am filming this afternoon the Ministry Ninja show, Church Planning and Money. It's going to be round 2, 10 more episodes coming down the pipe. Film those today. So that'll be 20 in the can. I'll be almost halfway through the year's worth. Excuse me, I didn't mean to burp on this podcast. See, Kerry would never do that.
Yeah, but you do it on like every episode, so I don't understand why now you're apologizing.
I do, but see, now I've got it's like Jiminy Cricket, I've got a little Kerry Newhoff standing on my shoulder, kind of telling me like, hey, Peyton, I'm a little disappointed in that. And by the way, we love Kerry. We're not making fun of Kerry. Kerry's
Jiminy Cricket.
It's funny. I think I've talked about this. I got a little, I think it's because he's so tall, but I got a little starstruck when I met him, which, I hang out with Ralph
face
Moore.
To face?
I met him. Yeah. And he's super cool. Super, as you would expect, right? Super down to earth, super cool.
How tall are you?
But he's really tall, dude.
How tall are you?
He's basketball player tall. I'm only 5'7.5", and I claim the half because when you're my size, you got to claim the half.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not that much taller than you, but I mean,
I can just
I'm
barely
not nearly as short.
I can just barely shop in the children's section at Target. Like I'm just on the cusp.
Are you serious?
I'm just on the cusp. I'm serious. I remember once there was a shirt that I wanted when I was overseas as a missionary. I came back home and I was like, and now I was a lot fitter. I was running a lot. And so I had a little bit less body fat, but I was like, I totally want that Batman shirt. And they don't sell shirts. This is back when Target wasn't as cool as it is now. And you were like, if you want that Justice League or whatever it is shirt, you got to buy a kid's. And I bought a kid's shirt. Might have been Star Wars. I don't remember what it was.
Speaking of being more fit, so everyone knows, if you've been listening to this podcast, I've been on my own little health journey, losing weight, dropping the poundage. Wayne here in my office has got me working out. He's actually bumped me up to 2 a days, as I like to call it, as if I'm back in high school doing football or something. And so now I actually, here's my secret. Like, if you really, really want to look good in a t-shirt, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Buy a women's shirt. Yeah?
Really?
No, not at all.
Oh,
no, that's actually it's pretty unattractive. But
I think of skinny jeans as women's pants.
Dude, here's true story on this. All right, since I've been in high school, I have never worn anything that wasn't either, back then it was baggy fit, right? Back in the 90s,
those were the good
early
days,
90s, baggy
before the
fit.
dark times.
Right, and then
Empire.
they got to loose fit. It wasn't quite as baggy. It's now loose. So I got this thing I got to go to next week, and I'm like, okay, none of my suits fit. Like, for those of you who haven't heard the story, I'm down like 70 pounds right now. Still got another probably 30 to go.
So rad.
And so I'm literally, there's not a single suit I got that fits anymore. They're huge. Like, I literally had to go buy a blazer just so I had at least a blazer. And I was like, look, I'm not going to spend money on a whole new suit because I'm not at my goal yet. Right. So I'm going to have to do it again. And I'm like, I'll just buy a blazer and a pair of jeans. So Jamie gets me a pair of jeans, right? And they're just straight leg. So they're not skinny jeans, right? They're just straight leg. And I'm looking at these things, right? It's literally 5 inches smaller on the waist than anything I've ever bought.
Wow.
And I go to put them on, and I'm like...
What waist size, by the way, are you comfortable saying?
I'm 36 right now.
Dude, that's amazing, dude.
I was a 42. Now I'm a 36. My guess is when I hit my goal, I'll be at a 34.
Wow, dude.
So...
That's so rad. I'm really proud of you, man.
Well, thank you. I can tell you,
that's hard work, dude.
I look pretty good, baby. I look pretty good. No. So anyway, I put on these jeans and I'm like, I thought these were like, I've never worn a straight-legged jean in my life and they fit fine. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, this is like the weirdest thing ever. I've never seen that on me. And I'm like, they're fine. It's totally cool.
That's rad, dude.
It's crazy.
Wow.
So I'd share
that's
that.
cool.
What's really cool too is
deep cut.
Yeah, we put out on the podcast, maybe a month and a half ago. I was like, hey, look, we're going to do a small little pilot group. Any pastors that want to get in on this, we're going to do a little ministry health challenge. Wayne will personally work with you and get you set up. And some of these guys are having incredible success. Like Wayne, the one guy, how much does he lose?
Josh has lost 19 pounds in 18 days.
19 pounds in 18 days.
No way.
One of our pastors, yeah.
That is insane. I was about to say sick, but I meant it like a young person.
No, but I mean, here's the other thing too: is he's a
rad.
tall guy, and he's 6'2", and like now I can just imagine him. I'm like, dude, he's probably like freaking yoked. Like he probably looks great. I'm like, you guys who are so much easier to get to your goals than guys like me, but that's all right. We all got to start somewhere. But so no, I mean that stuff's going really well.
Wow, yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. So good to hear that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool. Hey, so we kind of sidetracked ourselves about Ecclesia, but anything else?
I don't really think there was anything else to tell other than we found finally the name that we wanted to use.
Oh man, that's been the sticking point. Is every week thought of any names? No, and this has been going
for like
on
a month
for
and
months.
a half. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes crazy. And we've been
For those of you who
talking
don't know your Greek, that means the church, ecclesia. So.
Yeah, because, it goes back to, we'll still continue to do this. I mean, church planting is always going to be a passion. But, it's kind of like this. At a certain point, you got to go up the food chain because we think about it like this. All you guys coming out to plant churches, we think of it as like, oh, you're the cool guys, right? Like you're the good ones. And see, Carrie might say something like that to you. But the reality is these other guys that are in established churches that planted 20 years ago, or they're servants of God, and maybe their church isn't growing, and they're faithfully holding the door, and they're being told, you need to be a movement maker, which is usually like a load of crap. And I hate to say that, guys, because I know it sounds sexy and cool, but it's just trendy to say it. And the reality is you're not going to be a movement maker. I'm not. Most of you are going to struggle to just keep your one church plant going all these years, if we're just being honest.
Right.
And people don't want to tell you that because that didn't sell. That's not popular. It's not, lo and behold, I'm usually the guy that says stuff that's not popular. But the reality is some of you guys are going to plant, and it's just going to be you and 80 people for the rest of your ministry, and that's okay. Like you may never hit capacity where you're like, hey, I can multiply, and people are going to guilt you over that. People are going to make you feel less than for that. And you're like, you know what? I don't see how I can do that right now, Right. And hopefully with our ecclesia and stuff like that, we can help those guys.
Right.
And that's because I also have a heart for those guys, the guys that feel stuck, the guys who want to quit, the guys who are stop going to the conferences because they hear all this hype and pizzazz, and they're like, yeah, but I'm not seeing it. And yeah, I bought your course on such and such, how to break the 200 barrier, and I just laughed the whole time. Like, yeah, I've tried all that. None of that worked. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I have a heart for those guys. And I think sometimes we have to go back and we have to rewrite what success is, what it looks like. And it would kind of be like telling a guy with no legs, like when you tell the average 92% of church leaders out there that they need to be movement makers. That's like going into a rehab hospital, finding a quadriplegic and telling him, you're going to be a gold medal winner in the next Olympics. That's God's calling for you. And it just, I don't think people check that enough. I don't think people talk about that enough and say,
right.
whoa, wait a second. Not everybody's called to be the Apostle Paul, right? Like Paul, for every church that Paul planted, there was a team he had to leave behind who were going to be there for decades. Like, let's talk about that. You follow me?
Yeah.
So ecclesia is kind of like, but it's also changing the conversation to kind of help people fit where they are and do what God has called them to do in their spot. And so it's a much broader topic, but then there will be people in that category that will be like, hey, I know I'm supposed to multiply, and I may only multiply 2 church plants during the tenure of my ministry, but that's cool. Like, I'm just excited, just want to contribute, and boom, boom, boom.
Right. Yeah. Well, and plus it's going to allow us to, like you said, handle some of these other areas. Some of the areas that they'll include will be business as ministry. Obviously, my passion is bivocational, and then oh gosh, man, I always forget. Theology,
best pastoral practices, some how-tos, some ministry life hacks. Like, there's so many cool things that, we'll be able to share which are, in many ways what we're already doing. But church planners, we always consider you kind of a special audience. So
and here's kind of the funny
quit
thing.
You church planner.
Well, here's the funny thing, because you and I have talked about this, and I was talking with Caesar Kalinowski about it yesterday or the day before, and that is church revitalization. So that's a really big deal nationwide because so many churches are shrinking and dying.
Right.
And it was funny because when I was talking to Caesar, and he goes, yeah, but when you start getting into church revitalization, all guys want to know is basically, how do I move Christians over here from this church over to my church and, get the numbers up so I can get the tithe up or whatever. Of course, he didn't mean that for everybody, right? It's just that is what a lot of people who were thinking church revitalization, how do I keep this building that's basically empty from closing its doors forever? Because this is my gig. This is my job. And I was like, yeah, well, Peyton and I have actually talked about that. And really, what do you do for church revitalization? You do church planning. Right. But they don't see themselves as a church planner. They see themselves as part of an established church. So you got to meet them where they're at, and then let me show you how to basically revitalize your church by implementing these church planning strategies and techniques that we have to do over here on the church planning side. And I go, Caesar, for you're the missional community guy. So how do you teach church revitalization? I'm like, you teach mission as, missional community. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I never looked at it like that. I'm like, dude, that's how you just frame the conversation in a way that they now get it. And you start to incorporate that DNA in there. And so Ecclesia Magazine really gives us that opportunity to hit people who wouldn't normally hear the message of church planning, but they will be open to it because, it's not under the framework of church planning, but we still get to do all the church planning stuff and keep all that stuff going.
Like all of the church planning conferences, like what people don't realize is like less than 25% of the audiences are church planners. Most of them are senior leaders at churches or churches that think about multiplying, or like you said, churches that go, hey, I just want to, I feel like you guys are talking all this mission, like I could benefit from that. So I'm coming along. But over 75% of those audiences are not church planners. And that's okay. And we've kind of picked up on that I think this podcast, you don't really stay on that long if you're not a church planner, but by and large, we want to help kind of the wider body of Christ out there.
We want them to understand the core values of what we do as church planners and in the church planning community. And they just won't listen to it because they're thinking of themselves as something other than a church planner. Exactly. So it's not that they see themselves as different, better, worse than, anything like that. You just don't identify with the term church planner. Right. Maybe you're part of a church that's been there for 50 years. It's down to 10 families. And, you really only need it for 2 hours a week. It's a building. Really what you got is a building. So you don't see yourself as a church planner, but that's really what you are. You just don't. So we gotta reframe the conversation in a way that they'll hear it. And then we can help them. So
Yeah, boy.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hey, how far, by the way, before we end Smack Talk? What?
3 seasons, 8 episodes. Is that where you're going?
Yeah. When I said, yeah, boy.
Yes, exactly.
Bill boy.
It's so funny.
We do finish each other's sentences.
Oh, as soon as you did that, I'm like, oh, that's Jason. I just watched the episode where they were in her void, Janet's void, and they were all in Janet.
Gosh.
And then when Janet's talking like Jason, he's like, oh, never mind, that's Jason.
That, what's funny is if you watch that show,
what we're talking about. If
we're talking about The Good Place. If you haven't watched it, I told Pete he's got to watch it, and he was like, I don't know, And anyways, he watched it, and it is the funniest show I've seen in so long. But if you watch this one character, Jason, you just got to watch, like, no matter where he's at in a scene, he's always got this super dopey expression on his face. To me, like, particularly during like the last few episodes of the season, I started really tuning in to just watching his facial expressions when he's not even on. Like, he's just in the background, and it is funny as heck. And yes, that scene where Janet the actress that plays this character, Janet, everybody gets switched into someone else's bodies. And she has to act like every other character on that show. And it is the funniest freaking thing. When she does Jason, when her mouth goes off to the side, that little puckered up mouth to the side thing, and that clueless expression because the guy's a moron. It is so funny.
Well, here's how he died. He dies by hiding in a gun safe and thinking he would still have enough air if he had a snorkel on his face. It's not like the snorkel was going outside of the gun safe. He was just breathing through a snorkel inside of a gun safe. And so he dies. He suffocates and dies. I mean,
so funny.
Yeah, the first few episodes, I'm like, I don't know if I like this because I don't like how they're like representing heaven and and then I'm not going to spoil it for you guys who haven't watched it, but trust me,
He gave birth to himself.
It's funny, and what's funny is I could actually see some of the things that happen in there. I was like, oh, I could totally see that as being.
So in writing this
thing.
textbook right now for Zondervan,
don't tell me you're quoting that show, please.
I quote this scene where they go, you see, being good in today's world is complicated. You see, in the 1500s, if Samuel George bought flowers for his grandmother, he got 20 points in heaven. And he goes, but today he buys it. He buys it online on a computer that was manufactured in China in a sweatshop. And then the flowers were picked by a migrant worker who trucked it, an exploited migrant worker, and the company trucked it across America, leaving an enormous carbon footprint. And then it goes on to say, and the flower company, the money goes to the flower company that is owned by a racist pervert who sends pictures of his genitals to his employees. And so they're like minus 560 points.
What I thought was funny, and by the way, the points are, do you get into the good place or do you get into the bad place? The most realistic
gospel disclaimer, we don't believe that. We know that's not true.
Yes. Yeah. But the most realistic point in that whole thing is when they go, well, how many people in the last year have gotten into the good place? Remember when they're talking to the accountant?
Yeah.
And then they go, well, how about the last 5 years? And then it was 562 years since someone had gotten enough points to go into the good place. And I was like, oh yeah, that actually is true, right? Because and
that's what they bring up.
Yeah. You're not good enough to get into heaven. I mean, essentially it would have been better if they'd said, well, actually no one's gotten into the good place.
Right.
That would have been totally.
No one's ever gotten in because of boom, boom, boom. But it was still, it was still a nice, okay, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
But hey, we better get into today's topic, eh?
Yeah. All right, Doc, take us away.
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
By the way, was that like the longest smack talk ever? Because I was having a blast.
It was getting up there.
All right. So today we're going to talk about kingdom collaboration. I just want to kind of talk a little bit. Obviously, you guys know I keep mentioning it. It's kind of like, the time I met Rick Warren and had dinner with him. It's like the time I met Stan Lee in the airport in LAX. Did I ever tell you about the time I shook Stan Lee's hand, Pete?
Yeah. You know what, though? You should have asked him to draw a Spider-Man for you because I saw some guy do that and he took it on Pawn Stars and he was able to sell it for like $1,500.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, but it's kind of, I'm writing a textbook and that just feels the same. Like I will keep saying that, but I'm writing right now about networks and, in times past, like the church has always had structures and organizations that kind of indicate what it feels is important. So, for example, like during the time of the Catholic Church in the West, whole societies would be centered around a cathedral, right? Or the church in the town. There'd be an enormous amount of money and time and energy and architecture that would go into it. And here comes a train. You see, I was trying to talk fast real quick to beat it. Foolishness. But the beliefs when sociologists go back, they say, well, this was a structure. Structures and organizations embody the beliefs and core values of any given society. And so when you see how the church structures itself, it's usually centered around a belief system. So back then it was the cathedral, right? And that was the centrality of the church. The church was at the heart of government. The church was at the heart of society. It would be right in the town center, showing that the church ought to be in the center of everything that has to do with life. And then when the Reformation came, everything was about decentralization. They actually ransacked many of the churches. They literally toppled them. They burned the insides of some of them because they saw that. I'm not advocating that this was right, but it was a reaction against the belief systems of the Catholic Church. And what then happened was, even as, in the early days of the Reformation, they then made their structures around belief systems. So you had denominations that started to form. You had Calvin in Geneva, you had Zwingli, you had who had his own version, you had Luther, you had all these different groups that the Lutherans, they started, well, no, you're wrong. Zwingli and Luther differ on transubstantiation, whether the body and blood is literally the body of Christ, or is it symbolic? And of course, Luther famously starts banging on the table, "This is my body, this is my blood." And they get in this big heated argument, and there's councils, and there's all these debates, and everything became about sectarianism. Right? And so Protestantism, whereas like the Catholics had the cathedrals, Protestants had denominations, right? Because you don't have Catholic denominations. You have the Catholic Church, right? For Protestants, it's been about schism over belief systems. So you would say that today you wouldn't look at the physical structure of the church. The church doesn't care where it meets. It can meet in a park, it can meet in a warehouse, but where our structures and organization fall is along party lines, known as denominations, which are around orthodoxy and orthopraxy, which would be right belief and right practices. Like, do you, like the Baptists? The Baptists formed around orthopraxy, the right practices. We baptize adults, right? We don't baptize infants. So the church, the Protestant church, in a big way, has been very sectarian, if you want to put it that way. Well, interchurch planting, right? Where am I going with this? Interchurch planting. Over the last few hundred years, church planting has been largely sectarian. And today, what's happening with this generation coming up, and some of you will know this, some of you out here, you are what I'm about to describe. To you, it's not so much the right beliefs, it's not so much the right practices. And within the realm of orthodoxy, like primaries, primary orthodoxy, things like the Trinity, things like the virgin birth, the Apostles' Creed. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about secondaries, like who do we baptize, right? Like, let's talk about sanctification, right? Wesley's view or, non-Wesleyan view. Do we ordain women or not, right? All these things that you can divide over. But for the church,
are you keep getting
yes,
text
it's just freaking like, dude, stop texting me. I don't know how to,
because right now, like every one of our listeners is like looking at their phone, going, "Is that my phone texting right now?"
I know.
I thought I had it on vibrate. What's up?
No, it's because I'm using my laptop, and I don't know why it's doing that. I've got all my sound going through my headphones, but for some reason it's doing that.
Except for that.
Except for that one thing. Yeah, it's chiming. So anyways, all that to say, today's church planner, and particularly the next generation of church planner, doesn't give a rip whether the plant that they're planting is a Baptist, a Methodist, a Lutheran, unless they're party line holders. But that has been eroding, because the new structure that the church is starting to form around is what we would call local networks. So local networks would be like, look at Brian Sanders.
Did you just drop your coffee?
No, I just hit my freaking. Who's ironically texting me is Chris Langham saying, "Hey, let's swap microphones," because he ordered this microphone that I cannot stand, and he wants to trade me because the pop filter that he got for this microphone doesn't fit this weird space curvy highfalutin mic stand. So it gets knocked off if you breathe on it, which I frequently do breathe on it. But anyways, so going back to this, the structure is changing. Denominations are starting to become less and less important. I was reading something by David Fitch, who's a missiologist, who said, "Hey, when I got together a few years ago, and almost every single one of the heads of denominations that was in the room said, we're tired of investing in traditional church planting where we used to, because it's largely sectarian," but they said over 90% of them fail. And that's been our track record. And because over 90% of them fail, we feel it's a waste of kingdom resources. So one of the things that to me, some of you guys know, and this isn't a commercial, I'm just mentioning it. I started something called Citywide training, which is where you come together.
No. Give them the full name.
It is not Citywide Jump School. It is Citywide Church Planner Training. And it's basically the idea that you collaborate across networks, across denominations, and across all these other party lines to say, hey, we just want to see church plants in our city, right? Because it's kind of like, hey, we're kingdom-minded. There's a great chapter by a guy named Tom Bernardo, who wrote a book, and I'm trying to remember, I'm interviewing him tomorrow on this book, and then I'm blanking out on the title, so I have to go over Ministry Ninja to get it, but it's it's something.
See what he did there?
I think it's called The Truth About Church Planning, and it's with Zondervan. So he literally, he has a chapter, it's a brilliant title. It goes, we're kingdom-minded until you show up, right? Because you're the church planner, and until you show up, we're a kingdom. And once you show up, it's like, it kind of like it says, church plant in my city, to God be the glory. Church plant in my neighborhood, that's another story, right? So there's this, I would say, this weird. It sounds good when we say, "Hey, we're kingdom," and when it comes down to it, like I'll never forget. How much grief that I took for basically, like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go. I'm going to hold off. You know what I'm thinking. But I'm going to hold off. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to behave. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to wait a minute. Hold up. But I got a lot of territorialist thinking. Like, oh, what are you doing over there with that new breed? And the reality is, I would tell people, hey, new breed's no threat to you. New breed's not. But again, when we plant, nowadays, if it's sectarian, it's Paul says it's sectarianism, right? I'm with Apollos. I'm with Paul. I'm with this. And this next generation's starting to see through the sectarianism. So, like, for example, certain networks will tell you, you can only be a part of our network. You can't be a part of another network. Oh, why? If you're with our denomination, you can't have dual affiliation. That was when I first joined the Southern Baptists. It was because they dually affiliated.
Right.
And I was like, hey, that's rad. Like, I would literally, like a race car, put every denominational sticker on my church plant if they would have it. I'd be like, hey, yeah, you're all welcome, man. Let's plant. Vineyard, boom, pop it on here. Presbyterian, boom, slap, pop that on there. Methodist, slap, pop it on there. Let's do this. Come on, let's kingdom collaborate. And this next generation, that is how they are. The young people today don't care where they get the support from. They're just saying, support me. And, there are guys out there that are just out for a money grab. But there's also church planners out there that are like, no, I just want the coaching. Like New Breed, people would come to us from other denominations going, hey, and this is all changing now. I mean, that was part of the work that I did with Southern Baptists, was through Mac Lake, helping to bring them training. But the reality is, most guys out there, they would come to New Breed going, hey, we just want training. We don't want money. And over the years, noticing trend, and one of the refreshing people come like be like, so now you we want New Breed not here to have you us. New Breed is here to support you in doing your thing, which is church planning. And I really think we're entering into a time, Pete, where long as the church plant, as long as it's about the network or the denomination, rather than about what's happening on the ground locally, then we're missing the boat. And I think this generation's seeing. It's kind of like church planting isn't about Jesus anymore. It becomes about the church plant. It's like a place where like your focus is off, right? Like you've got your eyes on the wrong thing. It's a type of idolatry, right? It's kind of like in the Old Testament. They melt down all this silver in the book of Judges, and they melt idol, Lord, the Lord our God, or like the golden calf, Lord God delivered us out of it. You're saying all the right things, but that's actually idolatry. Your eye thing. The word. Your eyes are on the wrong thing. And that's what happens in church planning. Church planning is never meant to be about a church. I'm reading Brian Sanders' book where he writes about networks. And trying to remember what it's called. I think it's called Micro Churches. And I'm reading so many books right now, Peter. It's crazy. But his book,
that's funny because I'm actually watching so many TV shows right now. It's totally crazy.
That's so rad. I'm reading at an unprecedented rate right now. I can't believe how fast I'm reading, and it's all driven by fear. Like, I'm not going to get this book done, man. Faster, must go faster. But it's a. I really think we're in a time where people are going to stop caring about the broad network, like the network that's nationwide, that, kind of like if you plant, you have to give us like 5%, 10% of whatever your church takes, so that you can keep the network going. The church plant serves the network. I think what's going to happen is in future, you're going to look at church plants, that are going to be crossing the aisle and working together collaboratively to plant together in a city or in a local area, maybe a county, like picture like the county of San Diego or county of LA or like wherever, New York City. Those are local networks, and you're going to see people banding together. And here's the difference. Whereas I said like the old kind of structures and they were organized not around, the architecture like in the Catholic Church, but in the Protestant Reformation, it was organized around belief, and then eventually it became organized around, practice, like orthopraxy. This is the right way to take the Lord's Supper, or this is the right way to baptize. What it's organized around in the future is mission. And people are just going to say, I don't care how you baptize babies or not. I don't care about how you take communion. I don't care about who and what you ordain. What I care about is, are we reaching people for Jesus? And that's where the local network comes into its own, because the central focus of that is mission, the Great Commission, the whole reason the church is still here. And I just think somehow that is closer to God's heart. When Paul says about sectarianism that it's carnal to say, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, I follow Cephas, he says in that context, therefore there must be differences among you, and these are secondary differences. These are secondary opinions. I mean, when you look at the church in the New Testament, I kind of feel like everything we have today, like Pentecostalism, I just see that as like the Corinthians. The Ephesians, I see them as like, kind of like a more word-based, where they don't have so much experience. That's what they're struggling with. Paul goes, I pray for a fresh spirit of wisdom, revelation. Like every cross-section of the church today this existed back then. There were different flavors of churches, different types of churches, different things going on in different churches. And, there wasn't one size fits all in the early church. And there isn't today. But the mission of the church was the central driving factor.
Interesting.
I know I told you because it was like a little egg-headed today.
So let's just take a couple of minutes then and address what are you suggesting in how you work with other local churches? Like, let's get some practical application on all of this.
So one of the things that I think, and this is part of what we're doing with Citywide, we're actually formalizing this because, gosh, like when I first started church planning, I started with a bunch of people all over the shop. I had Arminians, Calvinists, I had Pentecostals, Cessationists, and I had a very well-respected guy that I to this day respect. And if anyone was going to scare me, he was going to scare me. He was the equivalent of like a Tim Keller for the UK. And he just said, Peyton, that won't work. He was one of my seminary professors. He said, that won't work. You guys have to be unified on all these things. And I thought about that, and I came to my belief and opinion that no, mission is the centralizing figure, because I laid it out on the very first night. Guys, I don't care about all these secondary things. I care about two things. I care about glorifying Jesus and reaching the lost. And if that's not enough to unite us, then we got big problems. And that worked, right? Went down like a charm. So then I said, look, here's my tradition. I am bringing my pets to war. No one got to bring their pets to war. We were going to war on enemy territory. We were taking captives, and we were focused on reaching the lost. And nobody owned the church plan. I even said, hey, I don't care if it's here in a year. All I care about is reaching the lost. And if they want to filter into other churches when we're done, I'm cool. And by the way, that's the first thing. The first practical thing is don't ever make the church the focus. Make mission the focus. That's a crucial difference. Making mission the focus. If you make mission the focus, a church will come out of it.
Right.
If you make church the focus, mission won't necessarily come out of it. And your church plant will probably die because mission wasn't the focus. So that's the first thing. Mission, we know it biblically, we know it practically.
Tell Chris we don't care.
I'm keeping the microphone, dang it. No, that's a notary who's coming now. So anyways, sorry guys, I can't mute it, because if I mute it, I'll mute all my sound. Then I can't hear Pete.
Let's not do that.
He's talking.
No, let's not do that.
Which is not happening, which I hog this all the time. But the second thing is to look at funding. Church planning's free. All right. Like, you don't have to fund church planning, really. But church planning, even though it's free, it's sure nice when you can pay for stuff. You can have nice things. You can do a bunch more when you have money. And that includes mission, right? Like, Paul definitely funded mission to Jerusalem by taking the collection, yada, yada. So he helped the Jerusalem church reach Jerusalem. So funding and mission often go together. And so you fund, and I would say practically, let's say you come together citywide and you do a citywide network collaboration that someone from each denomination or network is represented on a board. And it's not that you're going to bottleneck by every decision made by a committee, but everybody has a vested interest in this, right? And that you may multiply outward, and you might duly affiliate. You might even plant a Methodist church out of a church that's a hybrid. But you could come together and you agree on that. This is a centralized strategy. So this board would exist for a centralized strategy, and also centralized funding that would fund mission, not their own individual church plan. Thirdly, you would also have an assessment together that you assess for that city what kind of church planner you're looking for, right? And one of the genius things about this is a leadership pipeline comes into it. We call it leadership pipeline because it's trendy right now, but in the old days it just meant good old fashioned mentoring, raising people up, mentoring them, and taking with on everything. And so, if you're like Presbyterian, you got for a Presbyterian. If you're Methodist, you got to go to a Methodist seminary. And it's not that you're circumventing all that. That can all be done still. But you're championing. Like, maybe you say, hey, well, we've got this guy. They don't think in this city we have enough, impetus to get a church plant up and running. But it did something together, and it grew. We could multiply, and that church could have a grandbaby that would be a Methodist church, or it'd be something. And this is kind of what I'm saying is churches are shared by these networks and denominations. What's the harm in that? Where it gets tricky for denominations is if they've put, again, the church in a place where the church exists to serve the machine of denomination, rather than the denomination exists to serve the church.
Right.
And what we're finding right now is the denominations are shrinking anyways, and they're having to do staff cuts, and they are starting to wonder, have we got this the wrong way around? I was recently in an annual meeting for a denomination, and I sat in and I heard these exact thoughts being communicated. We've started to wonder if our people ought to just be pastors or bivocational ministers that are serving the denomination, but no, they're no longer fully funded because it's so top heavy, and it makes it so that the local church have to feed the corporate machine. And they're like, for example, with the denomination, they were like, hey, we're sending, I can't remember how much it was. It was something like 40% of their budget for their area was going to and they made this complaint. It's going to basically to feed the big superstructure. And they said, imagine if we afford 40% of our budget to give back to this area for mission. And everybody just groaned like whole crap when you put in that kind of perspective. That's amazing. So this is why I'm saying local networks are probably the way of the future, and it's what you had in the first century. For example, when you asked me to flesh it out a bit, I know we got to wrap up here, but when you asked me to flesh it out a bit, you've got Ephesus is the hub. And it plants the 7 others of Asia, obviously destroying a volcano. There were 8 originally, but by the time Revelation's written, there are 7. So you have the 7 of Asia. They all come out of Ephesus. They all planted teams, multiply outward in a spiral pattern, graphically. If you look at the order that Jesus mentions them, scholars think that the order in which planted, it just branched out in a circular spiral pattern from Ephesus, which was the and so that would be the existence of a local network planting that was hardwired for multiplication. Their leadership pipeline was put in place by Paul, who was lecturing David Hall in the Hall of Tyrannus, and he was literally he was creating a church planter factory. So that's a local network. So much so that Jesus addresses them as a unit. So talking about organizational structure. That seems to be an organizational structure that just recognized in the first century, and it was based on church planting / mission. Mic drop.
Cool. I dig it. In other words, reach out to others in the community. Just sum it up with that, or what?
Yeah. It starts with a meeting. It starts with a meeting of saying, "Hey, we want what we want to do," and again, citywide. I literally did start this by thinking, oh, citywide. You can go to ministryninja.com and you'll find you can email us, hey, because I haven't actually this publicly. We literally launched our first training thing citywide, but it would start with a meeting, and we're going to be putting all these materials together. People do this stuff. Training I found is always the centralizing factor for people. So you train together, you assess together, you need to train together, and you have a local network that was formed out of the planters that have trained together for a year. It forms itself, and again, that kind of just governing the body is a local network. It doesn't belong to any one of those denominations or networks. Literally would be something like when you see something called the San Diego Church Planning Movement or the Los Angeles Church Planning Movement. Typically in Southern California, Stadia put those together. Stadia would be first to say now. Back when we operated differently than how we operate now. We do this, and it's less Stadia, whereas back then it was about bringing you Stadia. Now it's about that. So that's how it starts. Hold a meeting, local leaders. It's vision. Going.
So let me just correct something that I said earlier. This is from Revelation 18:18. This for wisdom. Let one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for its number, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Little footnote there. You go down the footnote. See the manuscript 6616. So.
Oh man, I'm so glad you added that up.
Yeah, hey, I mean, saying hopefully have 616 as your area code. That just means the whole area is doomed.
Out of 616 called this. What? Oh no, just crossed my.
I love it.
All right, Pete, busy doing all the collaborations across networks, denominations. Even looking into citywide. You're quite a bit church planner. You don't have time for things like booking and payroll. How are you going to make it in today's world?
I'm glad that you asked that because I would over to 616simplechurch.com. And I'd reach out to Josh Henry over there at simplechurch.com, and I'd say, hey, Josh, I need help here at Simple Church in my church. Can you help me? You know what he'd say?
It's $16
a month.
A month. Run away.
It's not. This is the
Josh Henry, hey, thanks for being on the sponsor of the past. You guys over there.
So next week, when there's no sponsor on the Church Planner podcast, we all buy.
It's the best show. Let's be honest.
It is.
Right? The segue into the commercial is usually better commercial. But hey guys, this has been Peyton and Pete reminding you if you want the ones no one's doing, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
What? Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.